I want to make a few remarks on Senator Menendez's request for unanimous consent on the nomination of Donald Liu to be Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, and also on the nomination of Brett Holgram to be the Assistant Secretary of State for Intelligence and Research. The reality is that had these nominees been confirmed in August, they would have done nothing to stop the administration's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. President Biden bears responsibility for the catastrophe that has unfolded in Afghanistan. President Biden repeatedly ignored reasonable advice and the intelligence on what was happening on the ground in the run-up to the disastrous withdrawal. He abandoned the Bagram airfield well before August, setting the stage for the chaos at the Kabul airport. He wasn't even listening to his staff on what needed to be done on Afghanistan. Instead, he imposed an arbitrary deadline for political purposes with disastrous results. I'm not going to object to consent on this individual, Mr. Liu, and on Mr. Holgram in a moment that Senator Menendez will ask for. But let's be clear. The administration is trying to play a blame game to deflect blame for their absolute failure to conduct a reasonable and rational drawdown, to deflect blame for President Biden's decision to abandon Bagram to the Taliban, to deflect blame for President Biden's indefensible decision to give the Taliban a list of names of Americans and Afghans who are now very much in harm's way and in jeopardy because of the foolishness and the manifest incompetence of this administration. None of the nominees I have holds on would have made one difference in what happened in Afghanistan. And it's difficult to believe that even my Democratic colleagues believe, political talking points notwithstanding, how, for instance, the Assistant Secretary for Educational and Cultural Affairs could have stopped President Biden from gift-wrapping Bagram airfield and giving it to the Taliban. It's also important to provide a little bit of background on why these holds are in place in the first place. President Biden is not following the law. He's refusing to follow the law which mandates the imposition of sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Those sanctions had succeeded, had halted Nord Stream 2 in its place, and President Biden transformed an incredible foreign policy victory into an incredible foreign policy defeat. When President Biden came into office, he willfully and brazenly disregarded the law, and he allowed Nord Stream 2 to continue on its road to completion, which was in effect a multi-billion-dollar gift of Vladimir Putin at the expense of Europe's security and at the expense of American national security. However, there is still time to stop Nord Stream 2 if we act quickly. A pipeline that isn't 100% complete is effectively 0% complete. And I'm not going to stop working to halt Nord Stream 2, to stop Russia, and to prevent Vladimir Putin from economically blackmailing our European allies and threatening American jobs. These consents, and more broadly, what the administration is engaged in, is a blame game trying to distract blame from their own actions. But it's worth noting that I have offered to lift my holds from the beginning. And indeed, over a month ago, I extended the offer to Treasury Secretary Yellen, to the National Security Advisor in the White House, and to Senator Menendez, that I would lift the holds on Treasury nominees and lift the holds on State Department career nominees if the administration either imposed sanctions under CAATSA, the Countering American Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, or if they waived those sanctions in such a way that it would trigger Congress having an override vote On August 5th, I extended that offer directly to Secretary Yellen. Unfortunately, the administration hasn't acted on it. They have decided that their policy of gift wrapping a multi-billion-dollar pipeline for Vladimir Putin and Russia was so important that they wanted to deny Congress even a vote on it. Under CATSA, CATSA was passed for precisely these circumstances, for an administration that refused to follow U.S. law and refused to comply with tough sanctions on Russia. That's what the advocates of CATSA argued. This is a mechanism to force an administration to obey U.S. law and stand up to Russia. Now, at the time, the Democrats believed they were speaking about the Trump administration. But the principles behind CATSA apply equally to Joe Biden's defying the law and giving this gift to Vladimir Putin at the expense of U.S. national security interests. This administration has had a path for months to clear these nominees. It has declined to exercise that path. That path remains before it. Nonetheless, because this nominee and the next one are directly relevant to cleaning up the mess that the Biden administration has made in Afghanistan, I do not object.